All right. So again, a nice day to be out, right? I know it's been wet, but at least we have decent conditions to walk the plots today, right? So let's get going here. My name is Manni Singh. I'm the cropping systems agronomist here at Michigan State, and I have Kalvin Canfield with me. He's a grad student working and leading the project we will be talking about today, right? So he's sort of our expert, and I'm going to delegate pretty much all the questions and explanation to him, right? And be the second fiddle here. So again, I think I'll introduce the topic, the concept behind this project. It's all about basically thinking, can we do a better job with seed placement in small grain crops, winter wheat using as an example here, right? So something similar to corn and soybean. We are able to singulate having the optimal seed to seed spacing and optimal seeding depth in corn and soybean for a while now, right? But are we there yet in case of small grains like wheat? And what are the benefits of basically singulating and optimizing our seeding depth? So that is pretty much the overall concept I want you to be thinking about. And then Kalvin will explain basically what we, again, a little bit more about the theory behind our idea and what we are seeing based on our results until now. All right. And again, feel free to ask any questions. Basically, we want this to be more interactive. So again, feel free to ask a question as we go along. All right, sir.
Well, thank you, Manny. So like Manny said, my name's Kalvin Canfield. I'm kind of running this precision planting and wheat project. And the big concept here is, traditionally wheat's been planted with a seed drill, kind of inaccurate. We have big clumps and then maybe 2-3 seeds that are all together or separated out that are singulated, and then more clumps, seeds on top of seeds. We don't have uniform depth, and that leads to problems. You have these seeds that are emergent at different times because they're on top of each other at different depths, and those late emergers are kind of acting like weeds and sucking your yield out of your plants that have emerged first. And you guys have seen this all in your corn and beans. So how do we fix that? There's a couple of different ways we can kind of spread our plants out. We can lower our population and keep the same row spacing, or keep our populations the same and reduce our row spacing. Right now, 7.5 inches is kind of what the industry says with a drill. If you guys look at your handout,
I'm sure all of you have this handout in your package, so pull that out. We got some interesting information on that.
You can see at 15 inches, if you're planting 2 million plants per acre, which I don't know what you guys have been planting this year. I'm sure with getting late into the fields, you bumped up your population a little bit. Your separation between seeds is 0.2 of an inch. That's tiny. You're basically planting on top of each other. At that same 2 million seeds per acre at 7.5 inches, you almost double that, and you got about 0.4 of an inch separation. A little bit better, but if we want to increase our yields, increase everything, we need to do a little bit of better job singulating or getting more plant-to-plant spacing so that they have room to grow and they're not competing for resources. So that's where, if you're reducing your population or reducing your row spacing to achieve that. I got some samples up here from my plots down at Mason. These aren't for where they're from, but down at Mason, we'll have an opportunity to go look at that this afternoon after lunch. But at a 5-inch row spacing at a 500,000 seeds per acre, you can see how this plant is just tillered out. We're looking really nice and green. You got about 2.5-3 inches in between these plants, and it's nice, healthy, nice green. You look at these 2 million plants per acre at 5 inches, you can see how it's starting to get a little yellow. They're competing with each other, and they're not as strong. It's just not as good of a plant. Doesn't look as good. Same thing when you look at the 7.5 inch at 500,000. This is with the drill instead of the precision planter. This did a little bit better job of singulation, where this one, you can see you got 2 plants right next to each other, a space, and then another plant. But this low population, same thing. You got it tillering out nice, and it's looking really good. 7-8 tillers on this plant as opposed to, maybe 2 or 3 on this one, and it's kind of spindly. It doesn't look nearly as good. Any questions on anything right now? All right. Once we get into the 15-inch rows, it really puts into confirms what we were showing on the paper. There's not very much row space or space between the plants here at the 500,000 rate. And if you look at the 2 million, same thing. You have a bunch of seeds right on top of each other. There's not really a chance for these plants to tiller out and utilize what their genetic potential is. So with this, there's a couple of different things we want to do. If we reduce our rate and we're able to get these uniform plants, everything's tillering at the same time, we can get a lot better fungicide efficacy. If all of your plants are flowering at the same time, all your tillers are flowering at the same time, everything's the same, your blanket application at 10-5-1 is way more effective than if you're at this where you have half your tillers flowering, half of them are out, some are still in boot, while some are starting to head out. You're getting a lot more fungicide efficacy, and everything. Your management's way easier. It's way better, more effective. You can reduce your inputs and increase your yield quality by having better management practices.
Any questions so far? Again,
Manny, have you counted how many plants you have in each of those samples? I mean, similar, as far as we know how many heads per plant each.
So like this right here is 2 separate plants, but it's all tillered out. So
okay, so you have one plant in each sample, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but we'll have more number of effective tillers, right?
Right.
The idea is if the plant is tillering, it should be producing effective tillers, meaning it should produce a decent grain head on it. Otherwise, the plant is losing resources putting out that head, right? So if we have uniformly spaced plants, they should tiller out and produce those heads that are yielding. So we will be taking counts.
Looking at that one in the middle, if it's one plant, there's a lot more heads on
This-
that one than what there is on this one.
This is the 2 million where there's a bunch of plants in this. It's kind of pushing. There's only 2 or 3 tillers here, so that plant's able to push through its maturity a lot faster. It's trying to compete with all of its siblings instead of trying to push its own yield, push itself. It's competing against everything. Whereas these, it can kind of take its time, take its resources as needed, no competition, and you can have a lot longer grain fill here than if this is running out of nitrogen, running out of nutrients and space to go through and go to yield.
Yeah, right now it might look like that you might be seeing more grain heads here, but the idea is that this might run out of resources and might not give you that longer grain fill that Kalvin is talking about.
And you can see that right at the bottom, it's already starting to turn yellow, whereas this one, it's green. It's got plenty of resources out there right now. It's not trying to rob from itself. And that, with that, you can lead to the yield that's out there. We can increase our yield quality. So you're better falling numbers, more plump, better for all the grain mills out there that are going to start, hopefully they'll pay you on protein content and quality. So that's the idea, is let's improve the yield that's out there, let's increase it, and then let's improve the quality by something as simple as this. And, that costs nothing to just do a little bit better job of putting that seed in the ground.
So you're thinking that you're going to have as many heads at the half or at the million heads versus the 2 million populations?
Yeah. Yep. And that plant's able to just more tillers. So if you have your high population with only 2 or 3 tillers per plant, and then your half rate is 5-6 tillers, effective tillers, you got the same number of heads out there, but hopefully it's a higher quality grain, or it should be the same yield potential.
That wheat is starting to turn yellow a little bit. It's telling me it's starting to run out of nutrients.
Yep.
And this is just a demonstration, right? This is a 500,000, so that might be taking it too low, right? We go from 500,000 to million to 1.5 million to 2 million. So we are looking for what is that sweet spot where basically we are getting enough amount of tillers that are going to produce a decent grain head without running out of resources, right? So that's sort of the sweet spot we are looking, essentially, right? And you might want to talk about the data on the back,
Yeah.
Kalvin, that you have.
If you look on the back, we have just 1 year of data right now from last year, and you can see between the 0.75 million and 1.3 million population, that's where that, there's that yield drop at the 0.75 million. So this year we're doing 500,000. We're taking it down a little bit lower to see if it's still there. 1,000,000, because that's pretty close to in between the two, and we want to see where that gap is. What can we take this population down to without impacting our yield? So as a grower, you can reduce your seeding cost and still expect similar yield, saving pennies per acre, and multiply that across, and a lot happier.
Will part of your research be looking at an individual plant and seeing how many heads are on a plant?
Yep. So down at Mason, I have a subsample of 10 plants that I've been counting the tillers per plant since what was it?
About a month.
Yeah, about month, 2 months. I've been counting each one and tracking it as it's been going along. So from when it first started tillering, 2 or 3 tillers when I got out there first, till now, where my low populations, I've had plants with 14 tillers, and my high populations have been sticking around that 3 to 4 range. So we're trying to track and see, these plants that are putting 14 tillers on, I can't imagine 14 effective heads being put on. So where's that sweet spot where it's not cannibalizing itself by putting on all these tillers, and then at the end having to suck all that nutrients out, and it was a lot of wasted resources in the season. Any other questions?
Do you see more disease in some of these higher pressure or these higher planting higher populations?
As far as my research goes, I haven't seen any disease pressure yet.
Yeah.
Right now we're doing, I think, 2 rounds of fungicide on them. Right, Dennis? We're doing 2, one at 10.51 and then one was at flag leaf. So right now I don't have anything. Right behind me, this is spring wheat. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It's kind of a planter comparison. And in a lot of research I've been reading, they talk about how fungicide efficacy is increased with singulation. So this is all getting inoculated with fusarium, and we're going to see, what this higher rate, do we see more instances of fusarium in it, or how all that plays out. So hopefully next year this time when you come, I'll be able to do a little report on that.
And there is some research that does show, like, as you push populations to the higher end, you're changing the microclimate, right? So you have basically a higher potential for disease incidence. So again, we'll see if we are going to see some of that as well on top of singulation. Because again, going back to what Kalvin was showing in this diagram, our idea works as we push down on our seeding rates. So we are creating more space between seeds, and then we are basically bringing the other rows narrow. So essentially more seed to seed spacing. That's where the plant is getting that optimal space to grow out, produce tillers that are going to be effective, producing decent sized grain heads. So basically I think the idea is part of that is it's getting the ideal microclimate to not get a lot of disease infection, hopefully. You want to talk about your title? Basically, we are saying there, are we there yet?
So singulation, are we there yet? Obviously with corn and soybeans, we're getting a lot better at planting techniques. We're able to get one seed in the ground instead of planting doubles all the time. But with corn, we're planting 35,000 seeds. Soybeans, 120, maybe even 100, maybe lower. Some people are pushing lower. So with putting 1 million plus seeds out there, how are we going to do it? That's the big question. Our bottleneck right now is having the planter technology. We're using a monosem for my research, that vacuum planter, and we have plates where one seed's able to get sucked in, and hopefully one seed's getting put into the ground each time. We're getting there. We're seeing a lot of good singulation out in the field when we're out looking. One seed, at that 1 inch, 2 inches apart. Whereas your seed drill, you might have a big pocket, big clump of 10 seeds, and then nothing, 2, 3 that are singulated or, a couple inches apart. So we're getting there. I think with more industry support, we might be able to get a planter out that has the ability to singulate 1.5 million seeds per acre.
And we have our wheat specialist, Dennis Pennington. I forgot to introduce him before. He's sitting right behind. So we'll have a stop later in the day today, right, Dennis?
Yes.
Where we are basically talking about all the planting technology that can get us to this idea of singulation, right? Because in theory it's all good, singulation is good, we can benefit from that. But if we don't have the technology to achieve that, it's worth nothing, right? If you guys can't go out and do it, that's what we'll be talking about in that session later in the day. So stay tuned for that.